In the tranquil expanse of the Mongolian steppe, a vast sea of waving grass under the infinite canvas of the sky, a young boy named Temüjin stirred on the cold, hard ground. The night was deep, the air crisp with the promise of spring, and the stars hung like silver lanterns above. He was nestled amidst his kin, nomadic herdsmen, whose lives ebbed and flowed with the seasons. Temüjin's world was one of simplicity, interlaced with harsh realities. His family's tent, a ger, flapped quietly in the night's breeze, and the warmth of the fire smouldered, bathing everything in a gentle orange glow. Yet, from a tender age, the boy was acquainted with hardship. His father, Yesugei, a respected leader of the Kamag Mongol Confederation, had been killed by rival tribes. This misfortune cast Temüjin into the realm of survival's relentless tutelage. As dawn approached, he awoke, eager to embrace the lessons life had to offer. Barefoot and cloaked in a fur that belied his modest status, Temüjin felt the earth beneath his soles, each step a dance with destiny. Each breath he drew fortified his resolve, a latent passion for uniting his disparate people into a forged iron bond. In these morning hours, with his younger siblings still slumbering, the boy ventured to the riverbank, where the silver-blue water shimmered in the growing light. He gazed into the distance, the horizon whispering secrets of lands he had never seen. His thoughts lingered on stories of great leaders and their legacies, conquering fears as they conquered lands. Temüjin learned early from his mother, Hoelun, the strength found in resilience. She taught him tact, patience, and the necessity of strategic forethought, the bedrock principles that would guide him in future victories, both in battle and governance. Her wisdom flowed into him more profoundly than the river lay before his eyes. The young boy imagined vast armies, the thunderous hooves of horses shaking the ground, the call of the battle horn, and the rising dust of conflict. He saw not just conquests and the might of arms, but an enduring peace, a new life ushered in by unity and unyielding will. His heart pulsed with a rhythm synchronized with the earth itself. As the first rays of the sun began to paint the steppe in golden hues, Temüjin understood that he was destined for something greater. Though his journey was shadowed by obstacles as daunting as the mountains themselves, his determination sparkled with the brilliance of the morning star. In that pivotal moment at the river's edge, a leader was awakening, one who would someday be known not only as Temüjin, but as Genghis Khan, a name destined to echo across continents and through the annals of time. But for now, he was simply a boy with dreams as boundless as the steppe that surrounded him. As the seasons melted one into another, Temüjin's sinews grew strong, his mind sharp with the realities of a life dictated by survival and the whims of alliances. These were the days when resilience was forged in the fires of hardship, and the young Mongol found himself standing on the precipice of destiny. A few years passed since the death of his father, and Temüjin was no longer a boy with dreams. He had become a young man, hardened by the struggles of daily existence. He had forged friendships and alliances with great forethought, recognizing early the power of unity amidst the fractious tribes that dotted the landscape. It was the eve of a bitter winter when news reached Temüjin of an opportunity for retribution. The previous injustices his family endured had not faded from his memory. In particular, the Merkit tribe, who had once kidnapped his mother, were a lingering echo of grievance. The time had come to harness the prowess he had painstakingly developed to avenge the honor of his family. In a calculated move, Temüjin sought the alliance of his blood brother Jamuka. Though their paths had diverged in recent times, the bond of childhood, shared struggles, and dreams of dominion over the steppe reignited their connection. Together, they planned an assault, a decisive demonstration of martial prowess and strategic insight. As the ground crackled under the frost-laden skies, Temüjin and his men mounted their robust, agile steeds, symbols of their nomadic strength. The moon watched as his small but fiercely loyal army advanced through the night, silencing the whispers of the wind with their determination. They were a force, inconspicuous in size, yet formidable in spirit, a testament to their commander's influence. When dawn broke, it lit the towering ridges of the Merkit camp. The ensuing battle was swift and ruthless. Temüjin's strategic mastery became evident as his warriors circled like an ingenious snare, surprising their enemies with ferocity and precision. The Merkits, overwhelmed and unprepared, succumbed to the onslaught. In victory, Temüjin found more than revenge. He began to see the potential for a unified Mongolian nation. While the defeated were given no quarter on the battlefield, those who survived were welcomed under his growing banner, inciting a new order of loyalty through shared purpose rather than lineage alone. Returning to his camp, Temüjin reflected on the price of power. It was a life of sieges and strategy, of calculated risks and the occasional bitter clash with those he once called friends. Yet the path was clear before him, each step bringing him closer to the vision that now inhabited the very depths of his soul, a unified Mongolia, his people no longer scattered but consolidated into a formidable force that could eclipse the old ways of discord and infighting. Thus, in the heart of the steppe, under a sky vast and enduring as his aspiration, the young leader began to craft the legend that would one day encompass his name, his deeds, and his burgeoning empire. The success against the Merkit tribe emboldened Temüjin, but it quickly became clear to him that his transformation from a revenge-seeking son to a burgeoning leader was far from complete. The steppe was vast, and his vision of unification was not a simple path to tread. Temüjin had learned from past skirmishes and diplomatic forays that alliances could be as brittle as they were strong. The bond with Jamuka, although renewed for the Merkit conquest, hinted at underlying tensions. These tensions would soon emerge, sparked less by conflict and more by the fundamental differences in their visions for the future. In the years that followed, as seasons painted the grasslands anew, Jamuka proclaimed himself a Gur Khan of the Mongols, swiftly drawing to his side those tribes yearning for a return to the old ways. Their allegiance was reminiscent of familial ties, rigid and traditional, whereas Temüjin envisioned a new order of meritocracy. Despite the growing rift, Temüjin was sustained by his steadfast belief in loyalty born of respect and shared goals rather than age-old hierarchies. This belief drew more tribes under his banner, an eclectic tapestry of warriors bound by a leader who dreamed larger than life. It was in the heart of summer when their ideological clash erupted into a full-scale confrontation. The battle was fierce. The sun blazed down upon fields teeming with warriors and war horses, their collective cries harmonizing with the whistling arrows to create a cacophony of primal warfare. Temüjin's troops, though outnumbered, were fueled by the promise of change. Each warrior's place in the ranks was determined not by lineage or old tribal loyalties, but by skill and devotion to the common cause. The battle was grueling and drawn out, but eventually, through sheer strategic brilliance and formidable will, Temüjin's forces began to overpower those of Jamuka. Defeated and deposed, Jamuka fled, seeking refuge far from the reach of Temüjin's growing influence. This victory wasn't just a triumph of arms, but an ideological victory as well. Merit had triumphed over birthright. It reinforced the bedrock of Temüjin's method: unity through fair governance and shared endeavor. In the aftermath of the climatic clash, a grand Kurultai, or gathering, was convened amidst the broad plains. Tribes once fragmented came together, drawn not only by fear or force, but enticed by the promise of what Temüjin had to offer, a future secured under the aegis of one leader. In a moment of profound significance, amidst the solemnity of ancient steppe tradition and the anticipation of new beginnings, Temüjin was proclaimed Genghis Khan, the universal ruler, a title befitting one who now shouldered the mantle of a united Mongolian people. This pivotal moment marked the dawn of an era, the flame of the Mongol Empire flickering into existence under the vast, expansive sky of their homeland. From here, the vision of a nation, unified and resplendent, began not just as a possibility, but as a burgeoning reality, set to change the face of history itself. Having been proclaimed Genghis Khan, Temüjin bore not only a new title, but the weight of the dreams and ambitions tied intrinsically to it. His authority now extended across the vast expanse of Mongolian lands, yet he knew that the trials faced so far were mere prologues to the challenges that awaited. Unifying the fractious tribes was a monumental achievement, but maintaining and expanding this newfound empire demanded strategic genius and relentless energy. With the Mongolian steppes as his cradle, Genghis Khan envisioned an empire that reached far beyond the horizons he could see. His gaze turned towards the sedentary cultures that bordered his nomadic realm, lands overflowing with riches, sophisticated structures, and sprawling cities. These territories were marked by trade routes and silken caravans, tantalizing to eyes set on expansion. One of the neighboring kingdoms, the Western Xia in northwestern China, became the focus of Genghis Khan's strategic ambitions. The Xia dynasty, long established and resilient, presented both a formidable challenge and an irresistible opportunity. The initial conflict with the Xia was marked by Genghis's characteristic blend of diplomacy and warfare, reflecting on how best to subdue an established society while avoiding unnecessary destruction. His army, seasoned from years of intertribal skirmishes and led by generals of unparalleled skill such as Subutai and Jebi, represented a new kind of military machine. Their tactics were fluid, quicksilver movements through terrain that felt like home, contrasting sharply with the rigid, static defenses of sedentary empires. The campaign against the Western Xia commenced with rapid incursions, utilizing the psychological warfare that would become a hallmark of the Mongol conquests. Genghis Khan's initial attacks sowed fear and confusion, efficiently dividing enemy forces and pitting them against one another in their attempts to defend sprawling borders. The sandstorms of the Gobi Desert bore witness to these early encounters. where the Xia struggled against the ingenuity of nomadic assaults. The Mongol forces advanced systematically, capturing key areas with speed and precision, and leaving behind whispers of an unstoppable force. Among the most decisive moments in early campaigns was the siege of Yinchuan, the western Xia capital, which was beset by a well-coordinated Mongolian assault. It was here that the brilliance of Genghis Khan's strategy became evident. Not only did he besiege the city, but he also cleverly utilized diversionary tactics and propaganda, making the Xia leadership believe that a treaty was possible if they surrendered swiftly. Ultimately, the siege culminated without large-scale bloodshed through Genghis Khan's cunning diplomacy. The Xia surrendered, offering riches and tribute to avoid annihilation, granting the Mongols valuable resources and a buffer zone for further conquests. Genghis Khan's reputation grew, painted in shades of both fear and fascination. Amidst the victory celebrations, Genghis Khan reflected on this triumph, not merely as the conquest of a rival kingdom, but as an affirmation of his vision for the Mongolian people. The unification under his banner was no longer confined to the steppe. It was a harbinger of a global reach. He had proven to himself and to the world that the Mongol Empire was a burgeoning storm of unity and power, ready to reshape the world's balance forever. With Western Xia subdued under his influence, Genghis Khan turned his gaze eastward towards the vast and wealthy Jin dynasty, which dominated a significant portion of northern China. Unlike the Western Xia, the Jin represented a considerable challenge, both due to their military might and the sheer size and complexity of their empire. To Genghis Khan, it was both a threat that loomed like a shadow over the newly unified Mongolian lands and an irresistible opportunity to cement his burgeoning legacy. The year was 1211, and the Mongol forces, with a confidence forged in previous conquests and tempered by discipline, began their march on the Jin. Before engaging in full-scale war, Genghis sought to understand his enemy. His spies and scouts moved like the wind, traversing the borderlands to learn about these settled peoples who seemed so resistant to change, yet were harbingers of untapped riches. Genghis Khan's early incursions into the Jin territory were marked by a series of lightning raids that exemplified his strategic brilliance. His forces employed hit-and-run tactics, raiding townships and supply lines with speed that left the Jin forces clutching at shadows. Each skirmish was not merely a military maneuver, but a masterclass in psychological warfare that slowly eroded the Jin's confidence and morale. By the time the Mongol horde laid siege to the Great Wall, which for centuries had stood as an impenetrable bastion against northern nomadic tribes, it was clear that the Mongols were not a mere rabble of horsemen, but a formidable force of nature. The wall, a symbol of separation between civilizations, fell with astonishing swiftness as Genghis Khan's engineers unearthed weaknesses, exploiting them with tactical precision. One noteworthy engagement was the Battle of Yehuling, a strategic masterpiece where Genghis Khan and his general Subutai lured the Jin army into a trap. Utilizing the terrain to their advantage, the Mongols flanked the unsuspecting Jin forces surrounding them. The result was a catastrophic defeat for the Jin, with thousands of their soldiers perishing against the organized chaos of Mongol tactics. The capture of the Jin capital, Zhongdu, in 1215 marked a turning point. Genghis Khan's ability to adapt and learn from each campaign was evident. Rather than a brute force approach, He utilized a mix of fearsome reputation, astute diplomacy, and overwhelming tactics to compel the city to surrender after a prolonged siege. Genghis's treatment of the captured city was pragmatic. While the massacres were recorded, he sought to utilize the expertise and riches of the conquered people, integrating them into his empire. In the aftermath of victory, Genghis Khan didn't rest on his laurels, but instead focused on stabilizing and administering the new territories. He introduced systems of governance that respected the structures of the settled societies he had conquered, advancing trade and communication across his ever-growing empire. The conquest over the Jin dynasty not only extended Genghis Khan's empire significantly, but also demonstrated the shift from a series of disjointed raids to a cohesive strategy that combined raw power with striking innovation. His reputation as a ferocious yet methodical leader grew, a leader not merely defined by the sword, but by a vision, relentless in pursuit, ever ambitious and ever expanding. From the vast steppes of Mongolia, the world began to feel the tremors of a new era, an era shaped by the will and brilliance of Genghis Khan. Fresh from the victories over the Jin dynasty, Genghis Khan's horizons stretched far beyond the familiar lands of East Asia. His ambitions transcended mere territorial expansion. He yearned for a legacy that defied the constraints of time. It was during this phase that the Khan's gaze swung westward towards the vast expanse of Central Asia, with its rich cities and prolific trade routes linking the east and west, most notably along the Silk Road. In the early 1220s, Genghis Khan turned his attention to the Khwarezmian Empire, a sprawling dominion that lay across modern-day Iran, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and Kazakhstan. The empire was prosperous and rich, but tension simmered beneath its surface. Its ruler, Shah Allah ad-Din Muhammad, was wary of the growing power in the east, albeit dismissive of the nomadic Mongols as a threat to his sophisticated empire. Initially, Genghis Khan approached the Khwarezmian Empire with diplomacy, sending emissaries laden with gifts to establish trade ties, a move rooted in both economic acumen and strategic forethought. This overture was met with treachery. A Khwarezmian governor, suspicious and defiant, seized the Mongolian envoys, executing them without hesitation, a significant breach of diplomatic norms. For Genghis Khan, this act was more than a betrayal. It was an unforgivable slight that demanded retaliation. The decision to go to war was, in some respects, inevitable, a blend of righteousness and pragmatic expedience to secure control over crucial trade routes and signal to the world the consequences of defiance. The Mongol invasion of the Khwarezmian Empire began with systematic precision, illustrating Genghis Khan's genius for war. Leading an army as resolute as it was diverse, he divided his forces, sending rapid contingents across the mountains and deserts to strike swiftly at multiple cities simultaneously, a tactic that sowed disarray in the Khwarezmian response. In 1220, the city of Bukhara fell, a jewel in the crown of the Khwarezmian region. The Mongols, numbering in the tens of thousands, descended upon it like a storm. Rather than bloodbath, the city was besieged with calculated terror and strategic conciliation. Genghis Khan is said to have entered the mosque, assuring the terrified citizens of peace should they submit, yet ensuring retribution against those who resisted. The garrison, outmaneuvered and desperate, was overwhelmed, and Bukhara's wealth and knowledge were assimilated into the Mongol Empire. Continuing his campaign, Genghis Khan led his forces to Samarkand, another critical city of the empire. Here, the Mongols demonstrated their extraordinary adaptability. With mastery over siege warfare, they employed catapults and engineering tactics to breach city defenses that once seemed impregnable. The defenders, overwhelmed by the swiftness and relentlessness of the Mongol assault, surrendered en masse, their rulers fleeing, heads bowed. Shah Allah ad-Din Muhammad's empire crumbled under the Mongol onslaught, his forces scattered, and his own flight into the desolation of remote islands where he met his ignoble end. The fall of the Khwarezmian Empire marked not just the expansion of the Mongol territory, but the vindication of Genghis Khan's strategy, a seamless blend of negotiation, technological warfare, and psychological dominance. In the wake of conquest, Genghis Khan demonstrated foresight in governance, reconstructing cities, fostering trade, and protecting the Silk Road under his dominion. He understood that the grandeur of an empire lay not solely in its expanses of land, but in its ability to nurture commerce, culture, and cohesion among its diverse subjects. As the sun set over the conquered lands, the ever-expanding Mongolian influence signaled a new dawn over Central Asia, a dawn crafted by the stark genius and expansive vision of Genghis Khan. As the Mongol Empire reached unprecedented extents, the world marveled and trembled at the might harnessed by Genghis Khan. But amidst expansion and triumph lay the need for consolidation, and it was within this period of reflection and strategic planning that he began to set the foundations for governance that would outlast his reign. The Mongolian heartland, still vast and undulating with steppes, remained the core of his empire, even as his influence radiated through exotic cities and new cultures stretched across continents. Understanding the necessity of infrastructure, Genghis Khan initiated reforms aimed at stabilizing and harmonizing the disparate regions under his control. He embarked on an ambitious project to codify the Bilik, the laws that would underpin Mongolian society. This codification, known as the Yasa, was an essential step forward, a legal system that, though grounded in Mongol customs, was adaptable, seeking to impose justice and maintain order across his diverse empire. The Yasa instructed on matters from warfare and hunting to betrayal and theft, with an inherently pragmatic sense of fairness that catered specifically to maintaining cohesion among his people. Meanwhile, Genghis Khan's knowledge of the importance of trade propelled his actions towards ensuring the stability and prosperity of the Silk Road. His conquests had opened routes once perilous and divided by tribal conflicts, now patrolled by his disciplined forces, ensuring security for traders and travelers from the shores of the Caspian Sea to the borders of China, an economic boon that spurred his territories forward. Amidst such structural measures, the Khan recognized the importance of loyal advisors and capable leaders to administer these vast lands. He appointed governors from among his trusted generals and adopted relatives, their mandate as overseers strengthened by merit rather than lineage alone. The merit-based planning echoed his approach to military organization, allowing talent to flourish irrespective of origins, thereby knitting together a multicultural tapestry under the Mongol flag. However, even in these times of relative stability and development, expansion was ever present in his mind. Genghis Khan was acutely aware that his empire's endurance was predicated not only on law and order, but on sheer might. In 1223, he directed his gaze toward the western steppes, toward the geographies steeped in potential conflict, the Rus's principalities, and beyond. A reconnaissance mission marched west under the leadership of his venerated generals, Subutai and Jebe. As a precursor to full-scale Mongol attention, this expedition against the Cumans and their allies within the Kievan Rus served twofold purposes. First, to scout these western territories, gauging both opportunity and threat. Second, to subdue potential adversaries who might otherwise disrupt the silk trade and threaten his empire's western borders. The raid into the heart of the Cuman and Rus territories was executed with a precision that had become synonymous with Mongol campaigns. Evolving into the famed Battle of the Kalka River in 1223, the engagement saw the unexpected confrontation between Mongol ingenuity and the allied forces of Slavic princes. Despite their numerical advantage, the Rus-Cuman alliance found itself outmaneuvered by the strategic deception and mobility of the Mongol contingent, resulting in a decisive rout. The impact of this lightning expedition was profound, not only sowing fear within the Rus' heartlands, but also etching a lasting impression of Mongol power upon European consciousness. The ripples of this westward gaze stretched far, nudging Europe to the edge of awareness of their eastern neighbors' growing might. Through calculated conquest and careful governance, Genghis Khan was crafting an empire held together not only by the sword, but by administrative competence and a shared Mongolian identity, a unity formed in the crucible of conflict and sustained by the vision of one of history's greatest leaders. The steppes of Mongolia were no longer merely the cradle of nomadic tribes, but the nucleus of a world-spanning dominion. As the Mongol Empire continued to expand under the dynamic leadership of Genghis Khan, the complex realities of managing such vast territories became increasingly apparent. The Khan, having led his armies through unyielding terrains, victorious yet tempered by the responsibilities of rulership, recognized the critical need for succession planning to ensure the longevity of his empire. In the early 1220s, Genghis Khan turned his attention inward to his family and the paramount question of who would continue his legacy. His 4 sons, Joki, Chagatai, Ögedei, and Tolui, were each fierce warriors in their own right, raised in the saddle and schooled in both the art of war and governance. Yet, the matter of succession harbored potential discord, as the Mongolian tradition did not favor primogeniture, but required consensus among tribal leaders and family members. Aware of the potential for civil strife among his heirs, Genghis Khan convened a significant Kurultai, a grand assembly of tribal leaders and his family, amidst the rolling plains that had been witness to so many crucial decisions. Here, with the weight of decades of conquest upon him, Genghis Khan declared Ögedei as his successor, not only because of his valor, but also his aptitude in diplomacy and administration. Chagatai, while a brilliant strategic mind, harbored a fractious relationship with his brother Joshi, and thus it was decided that Ögedei's temperament was best suited to shepherd the burgeoning empire forward. This decision did not erase tensions entirely. Joki, especially, nursed resentments stemming from whispers of his legitimacy, rumors that had followed him since his birth due to his mother Berta's temporary abduction by the Merkits. Genghis, however, deftly navigated these family dynamics. granting jockey command over the western expanses, a territory that stretched towards the lands of the future Golden Horde, embracing a semi-autonomous rule under the overarching Mongol Empire. In parallel to consolidating internal affairs, Genghis Khan continued to cast his gaze across his empire's borders. His ambitions remained irrepressible as he planned another grand campaign, one that would take him back towards the east, aimed at southern China and the remaining bastions of resistance within the Jin dynasty's dominions. As 1226 dawned, Genghis Khan embarked on his final campaign. Leading an immense army once again, he traversed treacherous paths and crossed the perilous Gobi Desert, pushing southwards with an intent to realize not just expansion, but the absolute dominance of Mongol rule. This campaign brought him to the Western Shia once more, a lingering thorn that had dared to defy Mongol authority after previously swearing fealty. The campaign was characterized by fierce engagements and relentless sieges, Genghis Khan at the helm, embodying the indefatigable spirit of his people. Despite his advancing years, his presence was electric, inspiring relentless loyalty among his warriors. In the siege of the western Shia capital, Ningxia, the Mongol forces showcased their diverse capabilities, blending traditional nomadic cavalry tactics with siege warfare innovations drawn from their contacts with various cultures. However, this campaign demanded a dear price from the aging Khan. The relentless pace, complex warfare, and mounting weight of years took their toll, yet he remained resolute, driven by purpose and the enduring vision of a unified empire. Now, with emperors' crowns resting at his feet and lands cloaked under his banner, Genghis Khan was not merely a conqueror, but a ruler who grasped the delicate balance of force, diplomacy, and governance. His legacy unfurled like the steppe itself, a testament to a life forged in battle, defined by sheer will, and resonating through the ages, a legacy poised on the cusp of permanence, though one yet hewn in full by the hands of his successors. As Genghis Khan's final campaign against Western Shia unfolded, the relentless passage of time began to weigh heavily upon the legendary conqueror. The harsh trials of war and the unyielding demands of leadership had etched themselves into his spirit and form. Nonetheless, he remained a figure of indomitable determination, guiding his forces with the unwavering purpose that had characterized his life's work. In the spring of 1227, the Mongol army redoubled its efforts against the Western Shia, driving deeper into its heartland. The relentless campaigns had sapped the strength of the Shia, their cities buckling one by one under the prowess of Mongol tactics. Genghis Khan's command had transformed the methods of siege warfare, integrating novel tactics gleaned from their encounters with other civilizations, employing advanced siege engines, and maximizing the mobility and ferocity of Mongol cavalry. But amidst their military successes, nature wielded its own formidable challenge. The skies darkened, and torrential rains lashed the lands, turning troops' paths into quagmires of mud. The unforgiving elements slowed their progress, pushing the limits of men and horses, a trial of endurance even for the tenacious Mongol warriors accustomed to the rigors of the steppes. During this grueling phase of the campaign, Genghis Khan was injured, either from a fall while hunting or perhaps in battle. Historical records vary in this account. Still, true to his nature, he pressed onward, spurred by the inextinguishable flame that was his dream of an unrivaled empire, shrugging off pain as he had countless times before. As the siege on the Shia capital of Ningxia concluded in Mongol favor, Genghis Khan was forced to reckon with the limits of his mortal form. He confided in his close circle of generals and family, affirming his plans for the empire's future, urging them to continue the conquests and to maintain the unity and laws he had painstakingly woven into their society. With foresight, he commanded that the Shia's destruction serve not only as a warning to other would-be dissenters, but as a stark testament to the iron-fisted unity he had forged. The final days of Genghis Khan were spent amidst the encampments of his armies, his spirit unbroken, his mind still plotting the endless horizon of his empire's fate. It is said that he had summoned his sons and generals, imparting wisdom hard-won through a lifetime of leadership. A stark reminder that the strength of the Mongol Empire lay not solely in battle, but also in governance and loyalty. As the summer heat waned, Genghis Khan's life, brimming with the sublime and brutal genesis of one of history's greatest empires, quietly ebbed. In August 1227, amidst the symphony of the steppes, the legendary conqueror closed his eyes for the last time. Yet his imprint on the world was indelible, a legacy etched into the annals of time. The news of his passing was deliberately obscured from the larger world through tactical secrecy, known only to his inner circle, to preserve the ongoing stability of the campaign and to avert unrest. In the end, Genghis Khan was buried in an unmarked grave in keeping with Mongolian traditions, amidst reports that the funeral procession was safeguarded by his retinue, who would ensure the tranquility of his resting place was sanctified by solitude. And so his spirit melded with the vastness of the land he once rode upon, leaving behind an empire that divided the old world from the new, a testament to a vision that saw beyond the horizon and reshaped the contours of civilization itself. His successors would continue the legacy, guided by his life's teachings, carrying the title of Khan further into the chronicles of history. With the passing of Genghis Khan, the expansive empire he had meticulously built was neither without its ruler nor its mission. Guided by his decreed succession plan, Ögedei, his third son, assumed leadership of the Mongol Empire. This was not just a moment of transition, but the beginning of a new chapter, laden with both challenges and opportunities. Ögedei was a leader forged in the same fires that had tempered his father. He had proven his acumen in previous campaigns, respected for his wisdom and diplomatic tact. As the new great Khan, his ascension was ceremoniously endorsed by a grand Kurultai, where the Mongolian princes and nobility reaffirmed their loyalty. This gathering symbolized both continuity and a conscious step into the future. During the early years of his reign, Ögedei devoted much of his energy to consolidating the internal structure of the empire. He continued the initiatives that his father began, reinforcing the Yasa's statutes and ensuring the flow of commerce and security along the trade routes. Establishing the capital at Karakorum, he transformed it into a hub of administration and culture, reflecting the Mongol Empire's cosmopolitan nature. Ögedei's vision carried forward his father's dream of global influence. Specifically, he recognized the necessity of fortifying borders and sustaining the momentum of Mongol expansion, thus distinguishing his reign with notable campaigns. Of particular interest was the continued pursuit of the southern territories of China and the steppes beyond the Caspian Sea. In 1231, Ögedei set the wheels in motion to finalize the conquest that Genghis had begun against the Jin dynasty. With meticulous precision, Mongol forces advanced under both the shadow of their past victories and the promise of new ones. They swarmed through northern China, employing a combination of sophisticated siege tactics and the merciless cavalry charges that had become their fearsome trademark. The siege of Kaizhou in 1234 marked the culmination of these campaigns against Jin. Mongol generals such as Subutai exhibited unparalleled prowess and strategic finesse, leading to the eventual collapse of Jin resistance. The last Jin emperor, besieged and without options, was met with the inevitability of Mongol dominance. His demise effectively marked the dissolution of the Jin dynasty, transforming northern China into a mosaic of Mongol provinces overseen by trusted lieutenants who retained the indigenous administrative structure while integrating Mongol governance. But Ögedei's ambitions were not restricted solely to the east. The vast domains of the west beckoned, not least because they promised access to Europe's frontiers. Thus, in 1235, at another grand Kurultai, Ögedei sanctioned a vast westward expansion, delegating the campaign to Batu Khan, the son of Jochi, and the illustrious General Subutai. This monumental move aimed towards Eastern Europe, a crucible of cultures and kingdoms ripe for conquest. The Mongol campaign into Europe began with a devastating advance through the steppes into the principalities of the Rus, demonstrating the same ruthless efficiency that had characterized previous Mongol advances. This effort culminated in the infamous Battle of Legnica in 1241, where Mongol forces decisively defeated European knights, further extending Mongol influence. Under Ögedei's leadership, the Mongol Empire not only reached its zenith in terms of territorial expansion, but also began a cultural synthesis that would influence the regions under its control significantly. The empire encouraged a flow of ideas, technology, and commerce, creating an interconnectedness unseen before. Thus, in the corridors of history, Ögedei Khan emerged as not merely an inheritor of an empire, but as a wise sovereign who advanced the edifice constructed by Genghis Khan. His reign helped cement the Mongol Empire's reputation as an indomitable force, engaging the medieval world in a dialogue of conquest and transformation that reshaped the very course of human civilization. The Mongol Empire, under the stewardship of Ögedei Khan, had firmly established itself as the preeminent power stretching from the East Asian coasts to the doorstep of Europe. Each conquest under his rule was not merely a military victory, but also an opportunity for integration and innovation. However, maintaining such a vast domain required more than just raw force. It demanded a network of alliances and an administrative rigor that could manage diverse populations and cultures. Ögedei Khan, mindful of the empire's need for efficient governance, continued to refine the bureaucratic structures inspired by his father's mandates. He understood that the empire's strength would be as much about what was built and sustained upon the conquests as about the conquests themselves. To this end, he significantly enhanced the communication avenues through the YAM system, a revolutionary postal and relay network that ensured swift communication over the sprawling empire, allowing rapid deployment of decrees, troop movements, and trade caravans. Under his administration, Karakoram flourished as a cosmopolitan hub, an epicenter of culture, trade, and administration. Traders, scholars, and artisans converged in this city, bringing with them an exchange of goods ranging from precious silks to intricate philosophies, each contributing to a burgeoning Mongolian renaissance. This period cultivated an unprecedented melding of Eastern and Western influences, manifesting in the art, architecture, and scholarly pursuits of the time. While Ögedei's vision for a cohesive, forward-reaching empire drove many initiatives, his reign was not without internal challenges. The delicate balance of power among the Mongol princes and generals demanded tactful leadership. The Khan had to carefully navigate the ambitions of the empire's noble factions, ensuring that the coalition of tribes remained united under the greater Mongol banner. Among these dynamics, pastoral revolts and sedition simmered within the empire's many provinces, spurred by mounting tides of local discontent. Each situation demanded a strategic mix of military might and diplomatic negotiation to quell dissent without unleashing chaos. Perhaps the most pressing internal challenge that Ögedei confronted came from the question of succession, a pressing issue given the familial rivalries that could tear the empire apart. As his own health began to show signs of wear due to his indulgent lifestyle, Ögedei summoned another Kurultai, intent on resolving these matters to avoid the fractious infighting that could unravel the legacy of his ancestors. In this assembly, Ögedei reaffirmed the central role of his line in the broader imperial strategy, yet his decision named Guyuk, his son, as favored candidate for succession, anticipating continuity in leadership. This choice, though strategic, stirred apprehension and rival ambitions among his other sons and the broader court of Mongolian aristocracy, each driven by personal aspirations for prestige and power. The Kurultai, while underscoring power transitions, also explored avenues for further expansion. Though Ögedei's barbaric energy had dimmed over the years, his empire still pulsated with possibilities, and the Khan's presence remained a binding force, a torchbearer of the Mongol legacy. As Ögedei Khan advanced further into his reign, the edges of the empire continued to push outward, and the Mongol spirit of exploration and conquest compelled its people onward. Despite the gathering shadows of political intrigue and external pressures, the Mongol Empire stood as a testament to the vision of its founders, a vast dominion of unrivaled breadth and persistent influence, rich in the diversity of its people and insatiable in its aspirations to reach beyond the known world. As Ögedei Khan's reign progressed, the legacy of Mongol conquest and governance continued to resonate across an empire. While the governance reforms and strategic consolidation of power had fortified the empire's core, its boundaries still fluctuated with the tides of war and diplomacy. The campaigns initiated in the West had left indelible marks, but the empire now faced intrigue and shifting alliances that demanded deft navigation. The campaign that beckoned for attention lay in Europe, where the European monarchies were becoming increasingly aware of the Mongol presence following their decisive incursions into Eastern Europe. The victories under the command of Batu Khan, particularly the Battle of Legnica and the devastating confrontation at the Battle of Mohi in 1241, where Mongol forces had vanquished Hungarian forces with characteristic precision and brutality, had made the Mongols a formidable spectre in European consciousness. Despite these victories, the Mongol tide did not surge further into Western Europe, halted by a mixture of strategic decisions and exigencies back home. It was into this dynamic context that the Mongol Empire sought to extend its influence and reinforce the perennial quest for expansion. Amid considerable military success, the succession question continued to loom over Ögedei, who, aware of his waning health, sought to strengthen his chosen heir. Yet the court was not without its factions. Some loyalties leaned towards Batu Khan, who had cemented his reputation as a formidable leader following the European campaigns. The possible schism had the potential to drive a wedge through Mongol unity, a threat that Ögedei was keenly aware of. Thus, Ögedei made strides towards formalizing his succession plans, though his intentions met resistance from both his immediate family and distant relatives within the Borjigin lineage, each maneuvering for influence. In a bid to navigate and subdue these domestic tensions, he worked to weave alliances through marriages and strategic appointments, forging bonds that would serve the Mongol greater good. Amid these political landscapes, Ögedei remained focused on reinforcing Mongol influence in the heart of conquered lands, particularly focusing on the submission of the Song dynasty in southern China. Here, the war against the Song presented not just a military challenge, but a logistical one, a test of the empire's capability to sustain long campaigns over great distances in varied terrain. Despite being in the twilight of his reign, Ögedei's strategic intelligence continued to manifest itself in the strategic allocation of resources and oversight of campaigns against the Song, which proved more resistant than other conquests. These challenges did underscore the varied dimensions of Mongol dominance, revealing the struggle not just for land, but for the hearts amid the cultural nodes of Asia. As Ögedei endeavored to secure and expand his father's legacy, the strain of leadership, coupled with his personal excesses, gradually depleted his health. By the end of 1241, the inevitable came to pass. Ögedei Khan passed away. The empire was momentarily thrown into uncertainty, triggering what was, perhaps, his greatest failing, a succession crisis that would brew into a storm of intrigue and conflict. Ögedei's death prompted the recall of Mongol commanders from Europe to attend the next great Kurultai, halting the Western campaigns abruptly. This sudden pivot not only preserved European kingdoms from further Mongol marches, but also signaled a turning point, a pause that navigated the internal complexities of an empire grappling with transitioning power amidst the relentless momentum of conquest. With Ögedei's passing, his influence lingered in the vast structures of governance he upheld and expanded, shaping an era characterized by the fusion of cultures and commerce, bridging the vast distances from the Chinese plains to the European forests. Though the empire now stood at the precipice of political reconfiguration, Ögedei Khan's leadership had indelibly pressed upon the world a Mongol legacy of martial might tempered by statesmanship and an era that remained far from over. The passing of Ögedei Khan marked a pivotal moment in the Mongol Empire's grand narrative. It left a power vacuum that crackled with the potential for both conflict and transition. With Batu Khan and his accomplishments in Europe fresh in memory, the Mongol leadership faced the Kurultai, a grand assembly to resolve the succession and ensure the path forward amidst the growing complexities the empire encompassed. The Kurultai was characterized by uncertainty and rivalries among the Mongol nobility, each faction vying for influence. The absence of a clear successor from Ögedei's line further deepened the brewing tensions. While Guyuk, Ögedei's son, was a prime contender intended by Ögedei, Batu Khan's sheer military prowess and the growing allegiance from the Western nobility presented challenges to Guyuk's ascension. This period of pausing campaigns allowed Batu Khan to consolidate his position, temporarily halting the Western expeditions that had brought Europe to its knees. Batu gathered power in the Western territories, his domain now an entity of formidable might known as the Golden Horde, a cornerstone of Mongolian might that would endure for decades beyond the original Mongol expansion. Under Batu, the Golden Horde became an influential force, encompassing the steppes and city-states of Eurasia, demonstrating the legacy of Mongol conquest intertwined with the Islamic and Slavic cultures it ruled over. Meanwhile, within the heartland of the empire, the political landscape reflected the unrest that lingered in the power vacuum. The regency was briefly held by Töragena Khatun, Ögedei's widow, who exercised political dexterity to promote her son Guyuk's claim to the throne. Töragena emerged as a powerful matriarch, deftly orchestrating alliances, drawing upon both her status as consort and as a mother committed to her son's legacy. Amidst these internal maneuverings, the external provinces of the empire showed signs of strain. In southern China, the ongoing campaigns against the Song dynasty continued under Mongol control, but were beset with logistical and strategic challenges due to the difficult terrain and the fierce resistance mounted by the Song forces. After 4 years of regency, in 1246, the Kurultai convened under the auspices of Töragena Khatun's efforts, electing Guyuk Khan as the great Khan of the Mongol Empire. His ascension, however, was far from unchallenged. Dissent simmered as loyalty within the empire was scattered among various factions, each holding differing visions for the future. Guyuk Khan's reign, though short-lived, was marked by efforts to consolidate power, reform the imperial administration, and reinforce control over the vast lands the empire spanned. However, his leadership was continually tested by familial feuds and the weight of expectations set by his predecessors. In an effort to centralize control and counteract the influences of the semi-autonomous regions, Guyuk set out to reassert the central authority of Karakorum, a task that necessitated reconciliation among his relatives and generals, a pursuit often hindered by inherent rivalries. Guyuk Khan's efforts to solidify the empire's cohesion faced obstacles both from within and without. The complexities of leadership in the ever-expanding and culturally diverse Mongol realm meant constant negotiations and scanning for new threats as the empire navigated through its volatile, yet always grand, history. As the Mongol Empire pressed on, seeking to carve its dominance into the historical record, the structures built amidst these turbulent times revealed the intricate interplay of power, ambition, and heritage, a remarkable unfolding of storylines that illustrated the enduring legacy of Genghis Khan's initial vision. The tale continued to unravel, drawing not merely from past conquests, but also the challenges of stewardship over the vast lands now under the Mongol yoke. The reign of Guyuk Khan began under the shadow of lingering political tensions and the profound expectations that came with the mantle of the great Khan. His ascension had necessitated intricate maneuvering by his mother, Turagena Khatun, and thus began his tenure not only with the weight of leadership, but also the baggage of familial and political debts that fragmented his court. Guyuk quickly embarked on consolidating authority, determined to assert the power centralized in the capital, Karakoram. Yet, his policies stirred discontent among the far-flung regions of the Mongol Empire. In particular, the western territories under Batu Khan's control remained a focal point of potential discord. Their relationship, fraught with past rivalry and burgeoning suspicion, cast a persistent shadow over Guyuk's efforts to maintain cohesion across the empire. Aware of these challenges, Guyuk focused on reinforcing administrative controls. He initiated reforms to streamline the military and civil sectors, with an eye towards preventing the fragmentation that threatened his father's legacy. However, his efforts met resistance from within the empire's ranks. Leaders and nobility, accustomed to the freedoms and autonomous roles granted during the expansive conquests. Despite the complex political landscape within his own borders, Guyuk Khan was also drawn to address external matters that continued to impact Mongol interests. The Song dynasty in China remained a challenging adversary, with all attempts at subjugation proving elusive due to the formidable terrain and the resilient defensive strategies employed by the Song forces. Guyuk's reign saw continued campaigns in southern China aimed at finally bringing a conclusion to this prolonged struggle. Externally, Guyuk's attention was drawn back to the west, where Batu Khan's influence continued to press upon European borders. The relationship between him and Batu, a delicate equilibrium of power and unease, demanded diplomatic overtures as much as it underscored the potential for conflict. Guyuk realized that rapid expansion had fostered both opportunity and the seeds of disunity among Mongol leadership factions, each nurturing their own spheres of influence. In 1248, amid these throes of administrative consolidation and military engagement, Guyuk Khan set out from Karakoram with a large entourage to address these pressing matters, notably intending to hold Batu Khan to account and reinforce the Great Khan's authority in the west. Yet, fate would have its due, and en route Guyuk fell severely ill and died unexpectedly, his ambitions unmet. Guyuk's sudden passing plunged the empire once more into a period of uncertainty. The abrupt power vacuum he left behind underscored the recurrent theme of succession crises that haunted the vast Mongolian dominion. With rivals poised in strategic positions across the stepped landscapes and fortresses alike, the choice of who was to ascend next to the untethered throne became an immediate concern. As his death deeply impacted the imperial structure, the Kurultai would have to be reconvened. However, within this void emerged Sorghaghtani Beki, a powerful figure whose influence would prove pivotal in securing her son, Mongke, for the throne amid the accretion of political power struggles. A matriarch of foresight and influence, her role was instrumental in guiding the empire back on course. As the Mongol Empire faced this new phase of internal realignment, it had to maintain the balance between the vast size and diverse cultures it governed, a testament to an enduring chronicle, a story of not just conquest, but the complex orchestration of empire across the pages of a rapidly evolving world history. The sudden death of Guyuk Khan in 1248 left the Mongol Empire once again in a state of flux, where the questions of leadership loomed large over the vast expanse of domains stitched together by the legacies of Genghis Khan and his descendants. This uncertain period highlighted both the immense pressures of maintaining such a colossal empire and the remarkable resilience of the Mongol political system, which, while occasionally fragmented, continually found ways to pivot and persist. Amid the slow, methodical gathering for a new Kurultai to determine the successor, Sorghaghtani Beki emerged as a steward of expert diplomacy and powerful influence. As the wife of Tolui and mother to 4 sons, including Mongke and Kublai, she was a shrewd and capable strategist who maneuvered through court politics with an understanding of both Mongol traditions and the broader regional dynamics. Sorghaghtani Beki's influence was keenly felt as she worked in the background to secure the support needed for her son Mongke to ascend the throne. Her alliances with powerful Mongol factions, promises to key tribal leaders, and careful management of her son's roles within the Mongol military and administration enabled her to build a network strong enough to contend with any emerging rivals. The Kurultai eventually convened in 1251. It was an eventful gathering marked not only by a decision of succession, but also by a public reckoning of rival factions that had opposed Mongke's claim. With familial discord temporarily held at bay and her son confirmed as the Great Khan, Sorghaghtani's political maneuvers bore fruit, setting the stage for a new era of leadership defined by her sons. Mongke Khan's reign marked a return to stability and a renewed vigor in realizing the empire's potential. From the outset, Mongke displayed a clarity of vision that extended into both the military and the administrative domains. Determined to solidify Mongol authority across the empire, he initiated a sweeping centralization effort, implementing reforms that aimed to stabilize governance and rekindle the expansionist spirit of previous years. A significant aspect of his leadership involved resuming the campaigns that his predecessors had left unfinished. In Europe, Batu Khan had maintained the formidable Golden Horde that continued to exert influence. However, Mongke's sights were set on the southern campaign against the Song dynasty in China, a protracted struggle that continued to defy easy resolution due to the region's complexity and entrenched resistance. Mongke Khan's initiatives revitalized military campaigns, underscored by a systematic and thoughtful approach to conquests. He appointed his brother Kublai to lead the campaigns in China, recognizing his capabilities to command and govern effectively. Kublai, known for his affinity with sedentary cultures and innovative strategies, embarked on the mission with the intent of bringing the Song dynasty firmly under Mongol control and expanding the already vast Mongolian domain. In addition to military campaigns, Mongke Khan revived missions to re-establish unyielding control over territories that had begun to lapse into autonomy. His direct involvement and the appointments of loyal commanders played pivotal roles in revitalizing cohesion within Mongol ranks, fortifying an empire still teeming with ambitions. Through Mongke's strategic vision, the Mongol Empire entered a renaissance of organization and conquest, fostering a resilience that promised not just the perpetuation of dominion over lands far and wide, but also the nurturing of a legacy that seamlessly blended innovation, warrior ethos, and the timeless Mongolian pursuit of taming the horizon. In these formative years of Mongke's reign, the Mongol Empire continued to galvanize its remarkable blend of cultures and traditions, projecting a force that seamlessly combined the martial prowess of its origins with the adaptive and knowledgeable governance demanded by its diverse subject lands. a legacy that, driven by the ambitions of its leaders, remained poised to unfold with stories yet untold. Under the steady hand of Genghis Khan, the Mongol Empire experienced a new wave of strategic expansion and consolidation. Mongke's accession had brought coherence to the expansive realms, and his ambitious vision sought to further stretch the Mongol influence into regions that had resisted the imperial touch thus far. Genghis Khan's focus was directed on revitalizing military operations and securing control over the empire's extensive territories. This involved tackling both the internal administration and external campaigns with renewed vigor. His commitment to reinforcing central authority was evident as he reorganized the administrative framework to ensure tax collection, implementation of laws, and efficient governance, while promoting trade and infrastructure development across the empire. Central to Mongke's strategy were the ambitious military campaigns against the Song dynasty. Appointing his brother Kublai to spearhead the southern campaign was a masterstroke. Kublai, both strategic and innovative, embraced the challenge, recognizing the importance of integrating Chinese culture and administration into Mongol governance. His approach to the Song was defined not just by raw conquest, but by efforts to win the hearts and minds of the populace through pragmatic policies and cultural respect. The campaign against the Song dynasty proved both arduous and instructive, requiring adaptation to the differing Chinese terrains and the entrenched resistance of well-fortified cities. Kublai's strategies often involved leveraging local allies, employing engineers to develop advanced siege equipment, and blending traditional Mongol tactics with local insights. This versatility in leadership began to turn the tide in favor of the Mongols, making evident the continued evolution of their military tactics. While the southern campaign unfurled under Kublai, Mongke was also cognizant of the western borders where challenges persisted. Batu Khan's Golden Horde maintained its considerable influence, now a linchpin of Mongol power in Europe, yet other theatres called for Mongol intervention. In particular, the Middle Eastern territories demanded Mongke's attention. The formidable region of Persia, fragmented yet vital, required a firm hand. In 1253, Mongke dispatched another of his brothers, Hulagu Khan, to embark on a campaign to eliminate threats posed by the remaining Muslim empires, notably the Abbasid Caliphate and the Ismaili Hashashin sect. Hulagu's campaign was methodical and brutal. In 1258, it culminated in the siege of Baghdad, the Abbasid capital and a pinnacle of Islamic culture and power. Overwhelmed by the might of Hulagu's forces, the city fell, signaling the end of the caliphate as a political entity. This conquest had profound repercussions, reshaping the power dynamics across the Middle East and marking one of the Mongol Empire's most significant expansions in the region. Through these simultaneous campaigns, Genghis Khan reinforced the Mongol reputation for both military might and the capacity for governance across diverse cultures. His leadership exemplified a distinct blend of Mongolian martial prowess and strategic governance, setting precedents that would reflect in the manner future leaders handled their dominions. As Mongke's vision continued to manifest in conquests and governance, the Mongol Empire reached new pinnacles of unity and influence. Yet the wheel of time turned inexorably, and it became evident that every chapter of expansion brought with it new challenges that would test the mettle not just of leaders like Mongke, but of the empire's resilience as a whole in a world constantly evolving and responding to the Mongol juggernaut's march through history. As Mongke Khan's reign propelled the Mongol Empire towards its zenith, the grand tapestry of his campaigns continued to weave itself across continents. His ventures underscored an era characterized by both formidable challenges and unparalleled accomplishments, sculpting the empire into an entity unprecedented in its scope. Among the critical endeavors during this period was the continued campaign against the Song dynasty in southern China. Kublai Khan's innovative approach and strategic insight led to notable advancements. Kublai effectively merged Mongol efficiency with the sophisticated administrative practices of the Chinese, laying the groundwork for future governance. His tactics on the battlefield, combined with efforts to gain the loyalty of local Chinese officials, facilitated a gradual but effective consolidation of power in the region. Central to these efforts was the capture of key cities, which served not just as military victories, but as opportunities to demonstrate Mongol tolerance and adaptability. This engagement with the local cultures and administrative practices helped to smooth the transition of power, ultimately contributing to the legacy that Kublai would establish as a ruler. While Kublai maneuvered through the complexities of the Song campaign, Mongke Khan's attentions were also necessary to address ongoing conflicts in the Middle East. After Hulagu's successful siege of Baghdad, the empire's hold in this region presented both opportunities for consolidation and threats to stability. Questions about the future governance of these new territories arose, requiring adept handling to integrate them effectively into the broader Mongol administration. Mongke's vision extended beyond conquest to include infrastructure and commerce, recognizing that the empire's longevity depended as much on prosperity as on military vigilance. The period witnessed significant advancements in the development of trade routes, reinforcing the silk and caravan roads that connected east and west, facilitating a flow of goods, culture, and knowledge. In 1258, the Mongol Empire had reached unparalleled heights, boasting an expanse that spanned from the eastern coastlines of Asia to the edges of Europe and deep into the heart of the Middle East. Yet, every step forward demanded careful oversight, a task Mongke took on with focused diligence. However, in 1259, Mongke Khan led a military campaign into the Dali kingdom in the southwest, consolidating the empire's control over this region. It was amidst this backdrop of unrelenting commitment to expansion and influence that fate dealt a critical challenge. During the siege, Mongke Khan succumbed to illness, an unexpected calamity that rippled through the Mongolian realms. His death heralded not just the loss of a leader, but precipitated a tumultuous period rife with the potential for discord and succession disputes. The Mongol Empire was vast, but its governance was fundamentally reliant on the dual dynamics of personal loyalty and familial alliances forged under the leadership of a unifying Khan. Mongke's passing introduced uncertainty, echoing past cycles of Mongolian leadership transitions. With no clearly established successor, the stage was set for another Kurultai, this time shadowed by a complex interplay of power dynamics among notable figures like Kublai, who had established himself as a formidable leader in the east, and Hulagu, whose authority stretched across newly conquered western domains. Each had ambitions, both personal and strategic, and the outcome of this gathering would not only determine the trajectory of the Mongol Empire's future, but also test the structural and political resilience of an empire at its peak. The passing of Genghis Khan was profound, a turning point that prompted both introspection and action among those who would vie to continue a legacy built on the vast steppes, battlefields, and diverse cultures knitted together under the banner of the great Khans. The death of Genghis Khan in 1259 sent ripples of uncertainty throughout the expanse of the Mongol Empire. His passing not only left a void in leadership, but also opened the floodgates to the competing ambitions among the Mongol elite, each driven by the potential to lay claim to the seat of the great Khan. As per Mongol tradition, a Kurultai, the Grand Council, was necessary to determine Mongkut's successor, but the empire's vastness and factional divisions complicated matters. To the east, Kublai Khan had been deeply entrenched in his campaign against the Song dynasty, steadily advancing his influence over and showing a marked inclination towards adopting the administrative policies of the Chinese. His success in integrating Mongol authority with local governance imbued him with considerable support, both from the Mongol hierarchy and the Chinese ministers, who saw in him a leader capable of harmonizing the dual needs of rule and culture. In contrast, in the western reaches of the empire, Hulagu Khan had firmly established himself following his sweeping victories in the Middle East, commanding a power base that extended from Persia to the borders of Egypt. His conquests had elevated his stature, further complicated by the varying allegiances of the Chagatai and Jochid lines, each with interests that diverged and converged across the empire's tapestry. Amidst this charged political climate, the imperial assembly at the Kurultai was delayed as the empire's key figures maneuvered for power. The delay was exacerbated by mistrust and geographic separations, along with military commitments that precluded swift resolution. The delay highlighted the susceptibilities inherent within an empire of such vast reach, where personal rivalries and territorial priorities often intersected with the need for unity and a cohesive succession. In 1260, a concurrent but separate Kurultai convened, ostensibly resulting in dual elections, one endorsing Kublai Khan in the east, whose authority was empowered by his support in the culturally rich domains he governed, and the other in the west, representing factions aligned with the families of Ogedei and Chagatai, who resisted Kublai's authority and supported Arik Burka, the youngest of Genghis Khan's grandsons, as their candidate for Khan. Thus began a significant schism, the Toluid Civil War, as both Kublai and Arik Burka laid claim to the title of Great Khan, leading to a fracturing of alliances that cut across the empire like tectonic plates shifting beneath a massive landmass. This internecine conflict was marked by strategic battles and shifting loyalties, drawing the attention of the empire inward at a time when external consolidation still beckoned. Kublai, leveraging his understanding of statecraft and the loyalty of crucial military and civil figures, maneuvered to consolidate his position, insisting on the continuity of Mongol expansion and governance rooted in the established norms but infused with innovation, melding Mongolian and Chinese administrative strengths. This pragmatic approach won him considerable support, but not without battles fought both on fields and within the halls of negotiation. Arik Burka, meanwhile, with his support among the Central Asian Mongols, wrestled with maintaining a consistent front against his brother's rising power, challenging both through diplomacy and direct engagement in what was essentially a bid to uphold the traditionalist claims of Mongol nobility. The war persisted into mid-1264, during which the empire weathered its first significant internal conflict. By navigating these turbulent times, Kublai Khan succeeded in consolidating his claim, leading eventually to Arik Burka's surrender. This resolution, however, did not come without scars. The civil war had splintered the empire, altering its unity and foreshadowing future challenges inherent in holding such a vast dominion together. Kublai's ascent to the undisputed title of Great Khan paved the way for his transformation of the Yuan dynasty. Yet it also marked a moment where the Mongol Empire's center of gravity began a decisive shift. In acknowledging and reconciling the challenges of governance across such a diverse expanse, Kublai Khan stood at the threshold of transforming the Mongol conception, embracing his rule over all of China's domains while reflecting on the enduring legacy of Mongol culture and the expansive narrative that had brought him here. With the conclusion of the Toluid civil war and his rise to indisputable power, Kublai Khan ushered in a new era for the Mongol Empire, his dreams extending beyond the conquests of his predecessors to a grand vision of imperial governance. As the self-styled founder of the Yuan dynasty in 1271, Kublai embraced the challenge of ruling not only as a Mongol Khan, but also as the Emperor of China, solidifying his authority in a land rich with history and complexities. Kublai's approach to rulership was marked by a diligent commitment to blending the nomadic traditions of his Mongolian heritage with the sophisticated bureaucratic systems of China. His court at Chengdu, and later at the new capital Dadu, present-day Beijing, became a vibrant center of culture and power, where Confucian scholars, Buddhist monks, craftsmen, and traders converged, showcasing the empire's multiplicity. This cosmopolitan court reflected Kublai's intent to draw upon the strengths of his varied subjects, promoting a meritocratic system that valued talent over lineage. He employed scholars and administrators from diverse backgrounds, such as the renowned scholar official Liu Bingzhong, who helped design the new capital, and Muslim astronomers and engineers whose knowledge contributed to the Yuan infrastructure. One of Kublai's monumental challenges was the ultimate conquest of the Song dynasty, a campaign inherited from his predecessors. The Song, despite being weakened by internal strife, remained a formidable force with strong fortifications and naval capabilities. Kublai knew that defeating the Song would require not just military might, but strategic genius and reform in naval tactics. It was during this period that Kublai initiated the construction of a Mongol navy, integrating maritime strategies into the Mongol war machine. This navy played a pivotal role in the siege of key southern cities. The siege of Xiangyang from 1268 to 1273 became particularly emblematic of this shift, where the use of trebuchets, adapted from Persian designs, shattered the city's defenses, exemplifying the innovative fusion of technology and tactics. The collapse of Xiangyang opened the gateway to further advances down the Yangtze River, bringing the Song Empire to its knees. In 1279, the decisive Battle of Yamen effectively ended the Song resistance, marking the consolidation of China under Mongol rule and fully integrating the vast resources and rich traditions of the south into the Yuan dynasty. While Kublai consolidated control in China, he faced ongoing challenges on multiple fronts, managing the vast and diverse Mongol Empire stretched from the Pacific Ocean to Europe's doors. His emphasis on infrastructure improvements, such as expanding the Grand Canal and building roads to facilitate communication and trade, showcased his commitment to securing the prosperity of his subjects. Despite these advances, governing such an expansive empire required continual adaptations to local cultures and expertise. Kublai's rule saw moral and cultural tensions play out within his administration, reflecting the delicate balance he sought between Mongol traditions and the Sinicization of his rule. Externally, under Kublai's reign, the ambitions of the Mongol Empire extended towards Japan and Southeast Asia through monumental expeditions that served to project Mongol power farther still, though not always with success. The infamous campaigns against Japan, the kamikaze, or divine winds that thwarted Mongol fleets in 1274 and 1281, highlighted the limits of his reach. Yet, by drawing on the breadth of his empire's collective strengths and addressing diverse challenges with an openness that drew from differing cultures, Kublai Khan carved a distinct legacy. His reign marked a refined chapter of the earthy Mongol chronicles, where nomadic roots and imperial ambition came together on a vast stage of history. Through the efforts of Kublai Khan's reign, the Mongol Empire under the Yuan dynasty became a beacon of cultural confluence and historical significance. As the Yuan dynasty flourished under Kublai Khan's stewardship, the empire entered a period marked by both achievement and adversity. The unification of China under Mongol rule was a monumental feat, a testament to Kublai's ability to integrate diverse cultures and administer a vast dominion with innovation and adaptability. Yet, even as Kublai presided over this golden epoch, the inherent challenges of governing such an extensive empire became increasingly apparent. Kublai Khan's focus was on solidifying the Yuan dynasty's hold over China while maintaining connections across the Mongol world empire, an effort that involved an intricate balancing act between expansionist policies and internal development. One of his priorities was strengthening the infrastructure that would support efficient governance and economic growth. He invested in the improvement of the Grand Canal, which facilitated the transportation of grain and goods from the fertile southern regions to the northern capital, Dadu. This ambitious project symbolized the integration of Chinese ingenuity into the Mongol governance model, boosting commerce and ensuring administrative efficiency in the heart of the empire. Culturally, Kublai promoted an atmosphere of intellectual and artistic exchange. He invited scholars, artisans, and traders from across the world, and his court became a crucible for diverse ideas and innovations. One notable figure was the Venetian merchant and explorer Marco Polo, whose accounts would later provide Europe with an intimate glimpse into the wealth and complexity of the Mongol Empire. Polo's presence in Kublai's court underscored the emperor's openness to foreign knowledge and his ambition to weave a cosmopolitan tapestry in the Yuan capital. However, Kublai's reign was not without its challenges. His ambitious foreign policy led to military excursions that tested the might of the Mongol armies. The campaigns against Japan in 1274 and 1281 ended in failure, repelled by the ferocious typhoons known as the Divine Winds, kamikaze. These defeats marked a significant limitation on Mongol expansion and reasserted the resilience of Japan in the face of foreign threats. In Southeast Asia, the Yuan dynasty attempted to extend its influence. Campaigns in Burma, Vietnam, and Java, though initially promising, met with mixed results. The demanding logistics of tropical warfare and the fierce resistance of local kingdoms tested Mongol resolve and resources. Internally, Kublai faced significant administrative challenges. As he Sinicized his court to accommodate his Chinese subjects, tensions began to emerge within the Mongol aristocracy, where some viewed his embrace of Chinese rituals and customs as diminishing Mongol heritage. This period also saw the difficulties of managing an empire with an intricate bureaucratic apparatus, where corruption and inefficiency posed recurrent threats. Additionally, the enormous costs associated with Kublai's ambitious projects and military campaigns began to strain the empire's finances. Fiscal pressures led to increased taxation, which, along with natural disasters like floods and famines, caused hardship for the peasantry, leading to unrest and sporadic rebellions. Despite these challenges, Kublai Khan's legacy was profound, characterized by a dynamic adaptation to the changing world. His reign demonstrated the Mongol Empire's capacity for cultural synthesis and the pursuit of a governance model that sought harmony amidst diversity. It carved a path that became a historical bridge, connecting East and West, nomad and settled, and establishing a history rich with echoes of innovation, conquest, and transformation. As Kublai aged, the inexorable dynamics of empire continued to evolve. The structures he built, while mighty, faced the tests of time and change. His reign, rich in achievement and complexity, laid the groundwork for the Mongol Empire's enduring influence, shaping the courses of civilizations that followed in myriad ways. The later years of Kublai Khan's rule were marked by the realities of maintaining an empire that, while grand in scope, was also fraught with the challenges of diversity and distance. As the Yuan dynasty consolidated its hold over a unified China, the strains on the empire's governance and economy began to surface more prominently, hinting at the complex web of issues that would require deft handling. Kublai's policies had embraced a meritocratic bureaucracy, drawing talent from across his dominion and beyond. However, as the years passed, the centralization of power in the Yuan court led to increased burdens on the local populations. The tax system, integral to funding the administration and military campaigns, became a point of contention. As fiscal pressures mounted, so too did the grievances among the peasantry and local officials, many of whom saw their authority undermined by the distant central court. Moreover, the Mongol elite, who had long served as the backbone of Kublai's military and administrative power, began to fracture along lines of loyalty and cultural identity. The Sinicization of the Yuan administration, while pivotal in maintaining the empire's structure, sowed discontent among traditional Mongol nobles who viewed these changes as a dilution of their nomadic heritage. This cultural tension hinted at the broader challenges of integrating disparate peoples under a unified command while respecting their unique traditions and identities. Externally, Kublai's ambitious incursions into regions such as Southeast Asia met with mixed results and often overstretched the empire's resources. The failed invasions of Japan remained a poignant reminder of the limits of Mongol power. The campaigns in Burma, Vietnam, and Java, despite early victories, faced the realities of inhospitable terrains and tenacious local resistance. These military endeavors, though showcasing Mongol might, also highlighted the logistical limitations and unpredictabilities of warfare beyond familiar grounds. Despite these setbacks, Kublai's court continued to flourish as a center of learning, culture, and diplomacy. The presence of foreign emissaries, including Marco Polo and other adventurers, underscored the global magnetism of the Mongol Empire. Their accounts brought back stories of opulence, administration, and the vibrant life that pulsed through the veins of the Yuan capital, offering the wider world a lens into a realm where East met West. However, the opulence of Kublai's court masks underlying tensions. The grandeur of Dadu and Shangdu, while testament to Mongol success, placed immense pressures on the treasury. Inflation and currency devaluation became pressing issues, as did the challenges of enforcing effective governance across the empire's vast scope. As Kublai grew older, his focus increasingly turned toward the legacy he would leave behind. Ensuring a smooth succession weighed heavily on his mind. The lessons of previous Mongol leadership transitions were unavoidable reminders of the potential for discord. His chosen heir, Genghis, had served ably as a governor in China, but his untimely death in 1286 introduced an element of unpredictability to the line of succession. With his health declining, Kublai faced the sunset of his reign, conscious of the monumental challenges and achievements that had marked his time as the great Khan. His final years were spent reconciling the vast accomplishments of his leadership with the inherent vulnerabilities of such an enormous and diverse empire. As Kublai Khan passed away in 1294, the Mongol Empire stood at a precipice, strong yet subtly quaking with the tensions within. His reign had transformed the empire and expanded its influence, forever altering the landscape of both Chinese and Mongol histories. Yet, as with all empires, the test of longevity and cohesion awaited amidst the burgeoning complexities of governance and cultural integration, a legacy that underscored both the grandeur and fragility of Kublai's remarkable rule. In the wake of Kublai Khan's death in 1294, the Yuan dynasty navigated through a critical juncture where the echoes of his triumphs still reverberated through the empire's expansive borders. Yet, it was an empire poised at the intersection of opportunity and challenge, where the echoes of Kublai's ambitious rule faced the hard realities of maintaining cohesion over an empire unparalleled in reach. Kublai's successor, his grandson Temür Khan, ascended to the throne with the weight of continuity pressing on his shoulders. Anointing himself Emperor Chengzong, Temür Khan's reign was characterized by an initial focus on stability and consolidation. He sought to reinforce the centralized governance structures implemented by Kublai, leaning towards policies designed to restore the empire's fiscal health and engage diplomatically with the diverse cultures under Yuan rule. Temür Khan inherited an empire rich with cultural syncretism, where Mongolian, Chinese, Persian, and European influences melded into the vibrant tapestry of Yuan society. His court continued to be a gathering spot for scholars and diplomats from across the known world, maintaining the exchange of ideas and technologies that marked the Yuan as a hub of innovation and learning. One of Temür's early acts was to address the financial strains left by his grandfather's costly campaigns and ambitious infrastructure projects. He aimed to stabilize the currency and reduce taxes to alleviate the burdens on farmers and traders whose grievances had led to occasional unrest. This focus on fiscal reform was central to his attempts to fortify the dynasty's economic foundation, vital for maintaining the loyalty and cooperation of both the Han Chinese populace and the broader spectrum of subjects across the empire. Temür Khan also sought to maintain peace and deter external threats through diplomacy. He engaged with the various Mongol khanates across Asia, seeking alliances rather than conflicts, recognizing the value of unity among the Mongolian realms despite their divergent paths since the time of Genghis Khan. His approach mirrored an understanding that the survival of the Yuan dynasty required careful management of both internal harmony and external relations. While Temür managed to maintain a semblance of stability, underlying challenges surfaced, revealing the complexities of ruling such a multifaceted empire. Regional governors wielded significant power, and maintaining effective communication and compliance across vast distances remained a persistent struggle. These issues were exacerbated by recurring natural disasters, floods, famines, and epidemics that tested his administration's resilience and the people's endurance. Temür Khan's reign saw the continuation of cultural and scientific endeavors, nurturing various arts that flourished under the patronage of the Yuan court. Advances in astronomy, medicine, and engineering were indicators of the intellectual exchanges that Kublai had fostered and that Temür sought to preserve. Despite his efforts, the ripples of instability were never far, pressing upon the edges of his governance. As his reign progressed, the signs of fragmentation loomed, marked by local uprisings that revealed the empire's tentative grip on its subjects. Within its own court, power struggles occasionally flared, echoing the underlying tension between tradition and reform. Temür Khan's reign was a delicate balance of preserving the grandeur of the Mongol legacy while navigating the challenges inherent in such a vast domain. His leadership, though steady, underscored the vulnerabilities of the Yuan dynasty, where the strains of cultural integration and the realities of governing diverse peoples began to test the very structures that had been designed to unify. Thus, the legacy of Kublai Khan, shadowed by the immense task of imperial administration, was carried forward by Temür, whose reign was one of pragmatic adjustments and reflective consolidation, a period of relative calm before the impending waves of historical change would once again alter the trajectories of both the Yuan dynasty and its grand narrative, woven into the tapestry of the Mongol legacy. The transition to Temür Khan's leadership after Kublai Khan's death had offered a semblance of continuity for the Yuan dynasty, yet the empire's fortunes were progressively being tested by the tumultuous undercurrents of governance and external influences. As Temür Khan sought to sustain the balance that Kublai had so meticulously crafted, the empire's complexities slowly began to unravel, reflecting the inherent challenges of managing such a vast dominion. Despite his efforts to restore the fiscal and administrative structures that Kublai had put in place, Temür faced significant difficulties in maintaining the Yuan political equilibrium. The challenges of governing an immense and diverse population were heightened by the emerging centrifugal forces within the empire. Regional leaders, emboldened by the necessity to manage local issues, began to assert increasing autonomy. One of the primary challenges during Temür's reign was dealing with the pervasive issue of corruption and inefficiency within the bureaucracy. As the empire's administrative apparatus expanded, so too did its susceptibility to graft and malpractice. Clamping down on corruption required constant vigilance and reform, efforts that consumed much of Temür's attention yet yielded mixed results due to entrenched interests and regional disparities. Externally, the Yuan dynasty remained vigilant in its diplomatic relations with neighboring states and territories. Temür pursued engagements with the other Mongol Khanates and reached out to states beyond Mongolia's immediate sphere, aware that the inflows of commerce and diplomatic harmony were crucial in maintaining the status quo and ensuring the empire's economic foundation. Yet, as the years progressed, Temür's ability to impose the centralized control envisaged by Kublai began to wane. The empire's borders faced pressures not only from rival powers like the remaining Khanates and the rising powers in Southeast Asia, but also from internal strife exacerbated by natural disasters like floods and famine. This environmental adversity further strained resources, prompting unrest among the peasantry who struggled under the burden of taxation and environmental hardship. Despite these challenges, the Yuan court retained its role as a cultural and intellectual beacon. The legacy of Kublai's openness to diverse traditions continued to inspire the arts, with advances in painting, literature, and science reflecting the vibrant exchange of ideas. The blending of Mongolian and Chinese cultural influences during this period produced innovations that enriched the imperial legacy in unforeseen ways. Towards the end of his reign, Temür sought to bolster the empire's stability through succession planning, aiming to ensure that the transition of power within the ruling lineage would be seamless and unchallenged. However, the pressures exerted by governance, coupled with personal and political strains within the court, cast shadows over the succession's certainty. As Temür Khan's health declined, the empire stood at a crossroads, its grandeur still resonant, but increasingly vulnerable to the strains of time and the inherent dynamics of change. His death in 1307 marked another moment of uncertainty for the Yuan dynasty, rekindling the perennial questions of power and legacy in the Mongol world. The reign of Temür, characterized by an earnest effort to uphold and stabilize Kublai's formidable empire, highlighted the challenges of succession in mega-empires woven together from conquered territories, diverse cultures, and intricate political networks. It underscored the enduring complexities of the Mongol legacy, a historical canvas where the boundaries of cultural synthesis, administrative advancements, and the persistent challenges of empire building continued to have profound implications for the unfolding chapters of the Mongol saga, leaving an enduring imprint on the paths taken by the empires and nations that would succeed them. With the passing of Temür Khan in 1307, the Yuan dynasty once again found itself navigating the precarious waters of succession. The choice of the next great Khan was pivotal, fraught with political maneuvering and the intricate play of power among the Mongol aristocracy, each faction striving to assert its influence over the vast and diverse empire. The succession brought Kublai Khan to the throne, although his reign was short. Kublai's time as Great Khan was marked by a focus on reversing some of Temür's conservative fiscal policies, attempting instead to reinvigorate the empire's coffers through flexible economic reforms. However, the persistent challenges of regionalism and internal dissent highlighted the fragility that accompanied the grandeur of imperial rule. After Kublai's brief rule, Ayurbarwada, known as Emperor Renzong, ascended in 1311. His leadership marked a pivotal attempt to reinforce the foundational strengths laid during Kublai Khan's tenure. Educated in Confucian traditions, Renzong recognized the importance of cultural assimilation and intellectual governance, principles crucial for maintaining order in a dominion teetering on the edge of fragmentation. Renzong undertook significant steps to stabilize and enrich the Yuan court's bureaucracy. By cutting extravagant expenses and curbing the influence of lavish and often disconnected noble factions, he made advances in enhancing the efficiency of the governing institutions. His knowledge of Confucian philosophy informed these efforts, prompting initiatives that sought to endear the Yuan regime to its Chinese subjects, a move vital for fostering enduring loyalty and reducing friction between Mongolian and Chinese administrative practices. During his reign, Renzong also enacted reforms to address societal needs by attempting to alleviate the burdens of the farming populace. Land reform and adjustment of tax policies were areas where his efforts were most focused, aiming to ease the economic struggles exacerbated by previous famines and environmental hardships. However, these reforms often faced backlash from powerful landlords and local elites who had grown accustomed to the autonomy enjoyed within their considerable jurisdictions. Internationally, Renzong continued diplomatic engagements with neighboring territories and other Mongol states, navigating a landscape where the unified front of Mongol Khanates from Genghis Khan's era had fragmented. Despite these divisions, the desire to preserve the legacy of the Mongols as a unified cultural and political force persisted, albeit tempered by the realities of evolving national identities. Renzong's reign also saw the continued patronage of the arts and cultural endeavors, reinforcing the Yuan court's reputation as a melting pot of innovation and cross-cultural exchange. Literary and scientific advancements flourished during this time, with the integration of insights from the empire's vast regions contributing to the intellectual wealth of the era. Yet, as Renzong strove to reinforce the empire's central structures, the underlying strains of maintaining Yuan hegemony became clearer. The enduring issue of regional autonomy, coupled with the complexities of a multi-ethnic empire, continued to challenge the stability he sought to uphold. As Renzong's health began to wane, the ongoing succession planning pointed to the same uncertainties that haunted previous transitions. His death in 1320 ushered in the reign of a new emperor, yet also reignited the persistent questions of governance, identity, and unity that underscored the Mongol legacy. The lessons from his tenure offered insights into the balance of cultural adaptation and traditional governance, providing an indelible reflection on an empire's journey through the corridors of time, a narrative still resonant in the histories of those it touched.